So hi everyone, and thanks for joining us on the webinar today. We're going to be taking a look at the Metric Insights platform and really just giving you a deep dive into the product and its capabilities. I'm Mike Smitherman. I look after sales and marketing over here at Metric Insights. I've got Marius with me as well. Hi, Marius.
Hello, everyone.
The usual housekeeping things. So, lines are muted, but happy to field questions in the Q&A window as we go through this. And as usual, obviously this is getting recorded on the Bright Talk channel that we're using here, so you can access it there. But we'll send out a link afterwards. So, as I mentioned, we're going to jump into one slide today. You're welcome, which sort of overlays sort of what we're going to be showing in the product, and Marius is going to go through that, and then we'll jump into the product demo itself.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So we're going to talk a little bit first about the steps required to basically stand up Metric Insights implementation, and that will help you kind of understand the pieces of how it all fits together, right? So for us, it kind of all starts with connecting to your data sources. So we have connectors that you can establish connection to all of the major BI tools out there, everything from Tableau to Domo to open source tools like Superset, ThoughtSpot, etc. Everything there. You could also have connectors that connect to your applications. So anything in the cloud can have a connection through Metric Insights plugins, and then there are data sources for databases, whether those be relational databases or NoSQL databases, Hadoop, things of that nature. So first, we connect to your data sources and BI analytics sources, if you like. And then the first step is all about bringing in and creating a catalog, right? So the catalog, it represents all of your BI assets that you want to bring in and have consumable, accessible by your constituencies. So you're basically creating this single published, governed, and organized space that has everything, including access to your Jira system and the things that you get from Jira, and the things that you get from Tableau, and the things you get from Power BI, and metrics that you pull from your database, whatever it is, all together. The BI assets go in first. And then the next step is you can, if you want to bubble up high-level KPIs from the underlying visualizations, you can build out metrics, either by connecting to those visualizations directly or by connecting to data sources. And you'll see later in the demo why that's helpful, as oftentimes folks don't want to just immediately deep dive into a dashboard. They want to understand the high-level number first, because that will help them determine, maybe which of the dozen or so dashboards available to them they should look at today. So we onboard the assets, then we publish up the metrics. And then once we have these pieces, now we can really combine them and deliver them in various presentation packages. So we have this notion of portal pages, which are these customized landing pages where users come in and they have a curated experience that's tailored to their specific persona, guiding them through the process. We'll show you that. That's one experience you can create for people. You can also create a distribution consumption model for folks. So there, it's a situation where I'm not going anywhere. Perhaps I'm so busy that in the morning all I have is a minute or two, and I can just look at my email. I can see an email that's come in, and I'm seeing the particular content that's been distributed to me, everything I need to pay attention to. And that could be, again, email as an example. It could be coming to Microsoft Slack, to Teams, or it could be coming to my mobile device. So we have a native iOS and Android devices where you can get the content delivered, and as well as have the portal experience for looking at it directly on mobile. So that's sort of the high-level landscape view. And with that, let's just jump in and take a look at how this plays out in the actual product.
Yeah, thanks, Marius. So we're going to sort of step through these different areas with you and sort of reference back to this, but we'll show you each of these pieces. So I'm just going to switch across to my browser and share my other screen here, if you give us a second. So let's do that. Okay, so let's start with the catalog view that Marius was talking about. So the first thing that users or customers of Metric Insights are doing is again, creating this sort of central space, this central catalog, a library of content for their users. And we'll get into how this is created in a minute. But in terms of what that is, well, as Marius said, the first thing we want to do is really catalog any BI assets in the organization that are interesting to your users. And so you'll see in the middle here, each of these tiles is really an asset that we've published to the catalog coming from a particular data source. So you'll see I've got workbooks from Tableau, I've got dashboards in Power BI, I've got reports coming from MicroStrategy. I may even combine that with things like files that we're publishing from a SharePoint or a file share, spreadsheets, PDFs. I may be publishing more sort of data science-y type applications that are getting developed out in the business via something like our Shiny, any real source of BI in the organization that I want business users to be consuming, I'm going to publish into this centralized space, and it's represented by a tile within the catalog. So what is a tile? Well, if we take an example like this first Tableau one here, what our connectors are doing when we connect to a particular data source like Tableau, but the same goes for everything that we connect to, is initially we're making a connection into that source. We're reading sort of any metadata around what is available to be published from that source, so which in this case workbooks and worksheets exist on our Tableau server. And when we publish one, in this case, this sales analysis workbook, we're picking up any metadata that might be interesting. So obviously, names, descriptions of the content, maybe the last time it was updated. We're capturing a preview image that gets updated each time the dashboard is, so that we can provide these sort of thumbnails and previews to users. And we can also then enrich that with any additional metadata that might be interesting to end users. And so the goal here is to give an end user the necessary context that they need to understand, A, whether this is an analysis that could be interesting to them, but B, exactly what is it and how it should be being used. So things like, we talked about descriptions, but maybe things like classification of the content. Is it, internal? Is it public-facing information? Does it contain sensitive PII information? Maybe attaching ownership to the content. So we might have business owners responsible for the sort of metrics behind this. There might be the technical owner who created it. Tagging it with things like glossary terms. So if we have standard definitions for our metrics and KPIs or other aspects of the analysis, exposing that to the user. So what does sales mean? How is it calculated? What constitutes that particular metric? Again, anything that gives the user the necessary context so that they can make a decision and say, okay, yes, this is something that is useful to me, that I want to click into and access. And when they do that, what you're seeing here is essentially that piece of analysis, in this case, Tableau, embedded a live visualization. So I'm getting exactly the same experience I would as if I'd logged directly into Tableau in this case, but embedded within the Metric Insights catalog. So it's passing my credentials. It's doing a single sign-on. I didn't necessarily have to know this was Tableau. I didn't have to know where it existed in Tableau. I'm just clicking through into it. And obviously wrapped around this, I have all that context that we were speaking about, so the definitions. Additionally, I might have documentation that's been attached to the analysis, release notes, help notes. We're going to talk about distribution and subscriptions shortly, but a consistent way of sharing and subscribing to the content up on the right-hand side here. And then also a consistent way, if you want to give your users of collaborating around this, whether it's the analyst adding maybe expert commentary to the dashboard or enabling your users to have a discussion around the data. Again, this is Metric Insights down the bottom, and is a consistent way of doing this, regardless of whether you're looking at a Tableau dashboard or a spreadsheet in the analysis at the top. So drill into the content, access it in one place. You'll notice at the top here as well, something else that we get through our connectors is an indication or a synchronization of the filters that are available in a particular analysis as well. So you'll see this blue bar here is, again, actually metric insights. We're actually synchronizing up what filter values exist in this particular analysis. And we do that for a few reasons. One is to provide sort of this global bookmarking capability. So as a user, I can come and save filter combinations and get quick access to those. You can programmatically set these bookmarks as well. So if this analysis is shared with Marius and I, and we're maybe country managers, if I open it, it might automatically pre-filter it to the UK. If Marius opens it, it might pre-filter it to the US. And again, it helps drive users who only have a few minutes each day to exactly what they should be looking at. The third thing it allows us to do is, if I am navigating through this, as a user, I can turn on this concept of sort of sticky filters that essentially persist what I'm looking at as I navigate through different bits of content. So in this case, I've drilled into a particular region in this analysis. I'm looking at it from that perspective. If I go back to the catalog here, maybe I want to drill into this Power BI dashboard. Again, you'll see consistent experience, metadata, context. Yes, this is what I want to look at. If I drill into this, because it's recognized that we have consistent filters across these two bits of analysis, even though they're coming from completely different tools, it's persisting the context that I had when I was looking at the other Tableau dashboard. Again, helping save time for these users who are not spending all day slicing and dicing data. So step one is about bringing this content in, and we're going to look again at how that happens in a minute. We have a consistent way of then organizing this content on the left-hand side. So the concept of a sort of single category structure, which is going to be tied to your security model. So you'll see in a minute that as users access the catalog, and we're going to look at it from an end user perspective in a minute, as users access the catalog based on their membership of maybe AD groups or LDAP structures, it's going to ensure that they're only seeing the content that's relevant to them. Folders allow people who, if I'm a publisher of content and I'm in this catalog, folders give me a way of, again, irrespective of where the content is, logically grouping it into groups, folders that I can then share with other users. And we'll see in a minute, as an end user of this catalog, I'm typically consuming stuff through folders that have been shared with me. And then finally, users themselves can drag tiles into a personal favorites folder. Obviously, that then gives them a shortcut to analyses that they found that they want to access quickly on an ongoing basis. Finally, on this piece, obviously as well, in accessing the catalog, I also have a search capability. So the content may be in my favorites that I look at all the time, but as a publisher, maybe I'm thinking about creating an analysis. I want to see what else is out there. As a consumer, I don't know what I don't know, so looking for things that might help me. This needs to happen in the easiest possible way. So we have sort of a Google-style paradigm for search, where we do some natural language processing against search terms that get entered. We look for keywords. We then recommend common search terms, common content that support that. But if I run a search, essentially we're searching across that set of metadata that we spoke about before, ranking the results based on algorithms that try and bubble up the most relevant content, obviously based on your search results. And I can go out and start filtering by each of those metadata components that we've added. So, show me stuff related to a particular category or created by a particular person. We'll talk about certification in a minute. Only show me stuff that's been certified or that's highly rated or that has high engagement with it. So we have a catalog of content. Everything's in one place. As a BI publisher, this gives me one place to sort of organize the content that I want to make available to my end users. So the question becomes, how does this content get into the catalog? Obviously I could go out and manually curate this catalog and just, dump stuff in. But typically there's a process, a workflow that needs to happen to get content in here. And it starts with the connection to the data sources. So if we take Tableau as our example. So when we make a connection to a system like Tableau, again, as I mentioned before, what's happening is we're making a connection, we're reading the metadata around what's available. That's ultimately giving us a list of, in this case, workbooks and worksheets that are available within Tableau. And what I can do is turn on the concept of content synchronization, which basically means our connector, our plugin, is going to go out and synchronize the content that's available within Tableau with making it available to the catalog. When we recognize that new content is available, we basically push that into what we call a publishing workflow. And a publishing workflow is to support essentially the checks and balances that need to happen to make sure that the analysis is accurate, it's correct, it's got the necessary metadata before ultimately we certify it and publish it into the catalog. And depending on the content, that process may be as simple or as complex as needed. In the scenario where, maybe it's a departmental report, it's being used by a fairly small audience. There's not, it's useful, but there's not super high impact if there's any issues with it. It may be a simple sort of one-step process where it gets synchronized. The analyst is responsible for reviewing it, and it gets a level of certification on completion. Alternatively, we may be publishing financial reports that go out to the street or the board where we want multiple parties involved in that process. The developer certifying the fact that the analysis is correct, the business owner having accountability for the numbers that are coming out, maybe even a governance or data steward team who are responsible for making sure it falls into compliance with what we need to push out. And again, ultimately that will get certified at a particular level into the catalog. And so as these workflows are populated with content, again, as a publisher or someone responsible for one of these steps, again, in the simple review process, I may have items that come into my queue for review. I'm responsible for checking them. I may be responsible for adding in additional metadata like tagging or classification before it ultimately gets certified and pushed out to categories that end users have access to. Or again, it may be a multi-stage process where there's multiple people responsible for each of these steps, adding in certain metadata, and again certifying it as it comes out the other end. So we use workflows to get content into the catalog. We're able to catalog your existing assets that you have and organize them in a way that, as Marius is going to show you in a minute, makes it much easier for end users to find and consume. Before we go there, there's one other concept that we're going to touch on. Marius spoke about this concept of metrics. So you'll see some of these tiles here have numbers on them. And so what often happens is that when you release a catalog like this, we're obviously making the content available now to end users, but as a user, I still may have access to a lot of reports and dashboards, and there's no way that I'm going to come in and track them all every day. And so what we can do is bubble up some key metrics across the content that might be interesting to that user and use it as a way of driving them to the right analysis. And so these metrics could be coming from our existing analysis. They could be coming from an underlying database, but essentially they're where we want to track time series data typically. So in this case, daily sales across, in this case, our different regions. So there could be dimensionality to these metrics. And when we create these time series, we're ingesting data into metric insights. We're analyzing how the data changes over time. And ultimately, we're looking for outliers and anomalies, in this case, simple statistical modeling, to recognize when something unusual is happening in the data, so that, as we'll see, we can alert people to it. We can link it to the more detailed analysis so they know, which reports to drill into. We can alert them on their mobile device when something happens. And whether it's this simple statistical analysis or whether it's enabling users to set up their own alert rules on the data so that they can be notified when something happens, again, it helps them say, okay, these are the 2 or 3 reports that I should drill into today because something happened with this metric that they contain. So again, from a publisher perspective, creating this catalog that combines existing content, any metrics that are interesting into this sort of single space where it's added in a very governed way. We're keeping a fresh set of content that people should be looking at, helps sort of stage the environment for then end users to come and look at this. And that's what we're going to look at now. I'm going to hand over to Marius. I'm just going to share our other browser here. And we're going to look at, what might this look like for a business user coming into Metric Insights who maybe, again, has a few minutes every day where they're thinking about data.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. So let's look at the end user experience here. And so you see right away, if you notice that there's some differences here. All those, first of all, as a user here, I'm not seeing all the tiles like I did with Mike's persona where he was an administrator. I'm seeing a smaller number of tiles. There's no edit gear there. I'm not going to be editing. I'm just looking at this content. And the content that I'm seeing is essentially constrained by the security model. And normally that is a synchronization that happens with LDAP or Active Directory so that you can inherit the same security that you might have for these objects in the underlying tool, like in Tableau or Power BI for those components. And then for any other content that was published, self-service type content, PDFs, Excels, based on the category that content is placed in, I might have access to it or not. And so here you see, well, first of all, right away, you can see I have an announcement here. So I'm not only seeing everything under a single pane of glass, but I've got an announcement that tells me that, hey, we're experiencing some data load issues with the warehouse. The Tableau sales analysis report is being affected and it's not available yet. So that's really helpful. I know what not to click into, where I'm going to be wasting my time looking at data and then all of a sudden realizing that it's incorrect. So that ability to not only put everything under a single pane of glass, but really notify folks about the data quality issues, data delays, things of that nature in a highly targeted fashion. So I'm only seeing this because it affects my content. If this was an issue that didn't affect my content, I wouldn't see it. But because it's targeted, it builds a lot of trust and confidence in the information. So I've got this catalog, but I think that the key thing to think about is if I'm somebody who's really busy, then even just having this catalog may not be enough, right? Because what if I have dozens of visualizations that are available to me? And which one should I look at today? I only have a few minutes to allocate to this process. So in those situations, then we come into having we use this concept of portal pages, right? So to give you a sense of one of these portal pages are essentially landing pages that appear up here at the top. So let's look at this country overview page as an example, right? So here, based on my persona, what the attempt is to take all of the content that I'm interested in consuming on a regular basis that is really should be heavily used by me, and then combine it into this mashup that allows me to consume it in a way that minimizes number of clicks, right? So generating engagement is all about minimizing the number of clicks that I, as a user, need to go through in order to get the insight. Right? So if I have to go to multiple dashboards, if I have to change filter values multiple times, clicking here, clicking there, you're going to lose me. Right? And that happens time and time again, and then people don't engage with the dashboards that are created. This is an example of one way in which you can sort of address that. So let's say I am a country manager, and there are sort of 4 different things that I look at. Revenue, sales, employee counts, another kind of slice of sales by product. These things may come from different places. In fact, in this case, I think this one comes from Tableau. This one is also there's a Power BI dashboard, another Power BI dashboard, come from different BI tools. But I want to be able to see that information quickly, and I want to be able to have the ability to quickly flip between the different countries I manage, because I manage Canada and France, and so I should be able to switch into France and quickly see that data from those dashboards all coming together in this mashup in a single glance. Right. So that's an example of right there. Think about what I just did. Just to look at France, I would have had to go through 4 different dashboards to look at that and go through that. And then if I want to see more, right, then I'm going to click on that to see more. So this is a window into that dashboard. I click on product performance, and now I'm taken into that full Tableau dashboard, and I'm seeing that information in detail. I can do further drill down. But if you notice, my context has been preserved. So I don't have to go into that dashboard and reset France as my context, because that's all inherited from the portal page, from the landing page. So that's one example. Another example is, let's say I'm a different persona. Perhaps I'm an executive or somebody who's really a casual consumer of information, but there are lots of different KPIs that I need to track. It's not just 4 things that I can just pull into a dashboard. So in that experience, for that user, maybe I would create an experience like this. So here I've got some resources here on the right. So if I'm new to this page, I can look at knowledge base. I can look at, what are my videos, they explain this page, other things of that nature. And then here on the left-hand side, I have the actual content that I might be looking at. So I've got my favorites, sales reports and marketing reports, as well as this thing that's telling me that, hey, I've got some underperforming KPIs. So let's take a look at each of these concepts. So as far as folders, this is what these are. I can click on one of these, let's say my sales reports, and I can be taken to a folder viewer where I can see all of the content that is accessible that is in that folder. And it's at a glance here. So I can switch between different pieces of content. So if there are, let's say, 4 pieces of content, I put my favorites, or 10 pieces of content that have been organized for me by somebody and put in a sales reports folder and shared with me. I don't need to go back and forth from the catalog into each of these reports. I can just switch between them right here, one click away. And that is again a major improvement. And again, think about this from the perspective of I, as a user, can either curate this content by adding something to my favorites, as Mike showed you previously, or it can be something that's curated for me via one of those folders. In both cases, minimal number of clicks, I get to that content. Then another example of how I might use this is that maybe I'm not looking at particular content today, but I want to understand what's going on with high-level numbers. So then this entry point would give me that. I want to see what are the KPIs that are interesting to me and which are underperforming and which are performing well. So in this example, you can see that by a set of filter criteria, geographic region, operating category, service type, I'm bubbling up all the different metrics that I, as a user, should be concerned about. And I'm showing via the stop lighting and via changes from last period or for a target, whatever that might be, I'm showing how that particular metric is performing. Is it green, red, or black? And each of these metrics may be coming from a completely different dashboard. One might be coming from one Power BI dashboard, another might be coming from a Tableau dashboard, another might be coming from the database directly. Whatever it might be, I don't need to concern myself with going to that visualization to find it, because it's all been bubbled up for me here. And I can see what's in the red. I can switch my filter criteria if I want to look at some different analysis. And I can say, what really requires my attention? I only have a few minutes. What should I look at today? And then once I find something I'm interested in looking at today, then I can click on it, and then I'm taken to that visualization to do my deep analysis. So we've, as you can see here, we've completely inverted the model. Rather than making me as a user go in and hunt around from the dozens of dashboards that are out there to look at all the different filters on there to try to figure out what to look at, you've bubbled up the particular things that need my attention. You've shown me how they've changed. And now when I've clicked in to do deeper analysis, you've preserved my context, right? So I was looking at Canada, France before, it's kept France here. And so now I'm able to continue my analysis without having to miss a beat, and I would much more likely to engage with this content, and more importantly, much more likely to take action on the meaningful changes that have occurred in my business today. So if that curated portal page is not, let's say, everything that I want, maybe I've done this analysis and I want to look for something, I want to find out more information, then I also have the ability to search, as Mike showed you that before, right? So if I look at procurement here, I can hit return and I can see all the dashboards that meet, or all the analytics that meet that particular search criteria. And Mike showed you there's all the different visualizations are here by type. You can constrain that search in any way you want. But there's something else I want to show you here as well, which is that in this particular case, I found this procurement dashboard, but you can see that it's fuzzy. I can't really see the details, and there's a lock on it. And what this is showing is the ability to create discoverable content and have that discoverable content visible to users. And so what does that do for me? Well, if I'm looking for this, maybe I've not been assigned the privilege to see this content, but the author wants to make me aware of the fact that it exists. In this model, I can't get into it. If I click on it, I'm going to be prompted to say, hey, you don't have permission to see this, but click to request access. And this can go into a whole access request mechanism, either within Metric Insights or externally in your enterprise. But the point being is, by virtue of the fact that it's there, instead of me looking for this, not finding it because I have not been given access to it in the security model, and then going and getting an analyst to build a whole new copy of it, or going to create, wasting time duplicating this content, I'm aware of the fact that it's there. I access request, and then the fact that maybe the consumer didn't think of me when they built a security model can just be addressed while still maintaining this governed environment where people only see the things that are useful to them. So this is really an effective way to minimize excess effort and make sure that content can be found and discovered and so forth. So Mike mentioned earlier also that there's the ability to consume via email, and I did that at the beginning of the presentation, and that's another sort of a key consumption model. So if I'm too busy to go to the portal, a particular day I'm just caught up in my work, well, the portal can come to me, right? So I can have these distributions that are where this is what we call bursts, where I receive via email something that shows me what are my KPIs, just like in that portal page, what's changing, what requires my attention today, right? Maybe all the KPIs that I'm following. And then all of the different dashboards that have been collected into the folders or favorites, that an image of each of these things where I can see the current version of that with high enough fidelity image that I can see what's going on. And so in the morning, I open up my email and I come out of bed, and in 2 or 3 minutes, I scroll through these and I'm pretty much up to speed on everything that's going on. And the key is that these things can either be things that I've self-subscribed to. So I myself am guiding my experience by telling the system what's important to me through that simple act of clicking on a star. Or it can be something that somebody's curated for me. So, I'm an executive, and so my assistant has gone through and working with the BI team, identified the 20 or 10 dashboards and metrics I should be tracking, and that's what's coming to me every day with zero effort from my side. And I've got that context. Right.
So we've looked at things from a publisher perspective, so publishing content into this catalog. We've looked at things from an end user perspective and how we can make it really easy for them to consume information via the portal. What we're going to finish on here is that all BI kind of has a life cycle associated with it. So your reports that are useful now, potentially will have a shelf life, and there's probably stuff out there in your BI environments that are probably obsolete and shouldn't be being used. And so those publishing workflows that we spoke about should have sort of a review process as part of them. So, over time, after we publish content, we should be revisiting it and attesting to the fact that it is still useful to the business and something that we want to keep in the catalog. And so this piece that we're going to look at, that Marius is going to run through, is say, okay, how do we know whether a piece of content is still useful when it comes up for review?
That's right. Thank you, Mike. So again, think about, as Mike said, think about the life cycle of content and the fact that you need this function to manage that life cycle effectively. You need visibility into what's going on, right? And understanding who is engaging with the content, how often are they engaging with it, and really what's happening, is the content successful or not, and use that information to then drive changes within that content that make it more successful, drive your promotion efforts to make that content more well known and generate awareness around that content with the right parties, or deprecate that content if it's in fact something that perhaps was useful months ago but is no longer useful because something else has replaced it. Have the awareness to be able to know that that thing needs to be replaced. So to do that, we've provided a number of sort of engagement statistics, and as well as a feedback mechanism that I'm going to show you here. So here, to start off with, you're seeing the engagement by month, the engagement trend overall, and you can filter by different groups and categories and data sources, and you can understand how engagement trends are happening overall, who are your most engaged users, etc. Then I can also flip from here and look at content specifically. And here I'm kind of taking a deeper view and saying, within my core content portfolio, either overall or the content consumed by a particular constituency within your organization, what's most popular? What's getting a lot of traction? Hey, this is really successful. At least from a clicks perspective, right? From a usage perspective. What's increasing in popularity? What's trending up? And then what's unused entirely? What do I have published out there that is really just taking up space and is essentially clutter, because people are, or perceived as clutter, whether it's useful or not, intrinsically, as far as people are concerned, no one's using it, so it's out there. It shouldn't be there. Or what's decreasing in popularity? What once was popular is no longer popular. So that's a lens through which I can really understand what's happening with my content. And then if I want to, I can look at any particular piece of content and understand how usage is trending over time. So you can see here in this diagram, it's showing the users as those little dots as they're coming in to consume the content. And there's these 1 day, 30 day, 60 day, 90 day bands. And you can see that some of these users are coming back every day. So Mike is coming back and is looking at this visualization every single day. So he's staying in that one user band. But other users up here are, they were looked at it a long time ago, but then over time, it's kind of drifting off. And it's been almost 90 days since that particular user has looked at this. So you can understand here much more than just what's my 60-day actives. You can understand the answer to the question, well, did I launch this particular piece of content and did it prove to be sticky over time, where there's a collection of users that are coming back to it time and time again, and there's, every day or every week or whatever? Or is it that there was an initial interest, everybody came in because I announced it, and then over time, everybody drifted off and people are not coming back, suggesting that they're not really getting value from these analytics. And that's very important. You can also look and see, well, what are people looking for, right? What are the things that they're searching for within the system and finding within that, right? So the other thing we can look at is down here. We can see things like, what are the successful searches that are out there? Well, people are looking for things and they're finding them, and so that's great. They're clicking on things once they get into search. And what are the things where they're unsuccessful? They put a search term in, we provide results, but didn't click through on anything. So probably maybe we didn't tag things properly. Maybe there's too much content in this area, or maybe there's not enough content in that area. Kind of gives you guidance as to how to work with that. So we've looked at looking at the clicking activity and what we would call kind of a voting with your feet, right? The equivalent of voting with your feet. What did people click on to get to something? The other aspect of feedback that really should inform your governance process around content is more nuanced. It's understanding, how do people really feel about the content, more subjective, right? And to do that, we've introduced this feedback mechanism into the portal. So periodically, you'll be prompted here with this little pop-up that comes here that asks you, what is, ask you a question to provide feedback on the report. How likely would you be to recommend this report to a colleague, for example? So generating an NPS type score. And this is an adjustable question. You can ask whatever question you want here, as well as you can collect subjective feedback through just commentary, free-form text that I can provide here. And I can either prompt it periodically for this, in a non-intrusive fashion, or I can click on and give feedback whenever I want to on this content. And the idea is that this is just happening behind the scenes as people are consuming content. And to the content consumer, it's unobtrusive, but to the content publisher, they can look at any point in time and they can say, well, how's my sales analysis tile doing? Well, what is it really? How's the performance on that? And when I click on the gear to go back and look behind the scenes, I can see two things. I can see the engagement for that content. Here's, oh, look at this. I had pretty good engagement for a time, and then wow, it just dropped right off here. So, clearly something went south on this. So that's helpful. And I can also see the feedback that I've collected. So you can see here, I can see my overall NPS score is a positive or negative. In this case, it's more negative feedback than positive. And so I have a negative NPS score. And I can see what are the reasons why people are commenting, who gave it what rating, what was the subjective feedback on that was provided. And this will tell me either if things are going well, if I've got a positive score, then this is very valuable to know, well, what are the things that I did right here that I want to go and reproduce in other dashboards that I'm building? If I have a negative score here, then this gives me an opportunity to learn what I can either correct in this dashboard to make it better, or what I should avoid doing in the future. Maybe the colors are confusing, or the data analysis is right, etc. Right? And then scrolling down at the bottom, you can see a full history over time.
Hey, so let's and go back to our slide here just to wrap up. So we've kind of taken you through these areas here within the product. So again, the major components being connecting to content, being creating this central governed catalog that is available to users, and then probably as important, presenting that in a way that is going to drive engagement within your organization, drive usage of your BI tools and the assets that you're putting time into creating. And so all of these pieces are really required to do that, and bringing it full circle so that you can manage the life cycle of this content. It's not kind of a one-time and done thing. It's about being able to continually review the assets that are available to you so that you can keep a clean, engaging set of content for users. So hopefully that's given you some ideas for your organization. As always, available to answer Q&A and questions via email. And if there's interest in looking at more, then please reach out.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thanks for everyone's time.